The transfer window, of course, opens in January. Transfer Talk over on the website should be your first port of call for all the latest news regarding who is going where. Gab Marcotti is with us now to discuss some of those possible transfers. Gab, let's start off with Liverpool. Of course, a number of injuries at the back. Could we see them coming in for a defender this month?
I think that's definitely something that they're going to look at. Obviously, Joe Gomez, Virgil van Dijk out until the end of the season. I think or for much of the rest of the season. I think the dilemma is going to be, do you go with a kid who might one day become your starter? Bearing in mind you've also had the opportunity to assess Reece Williams a little bit. Or do you go maybe for a shorter term veteran? One guy they've been linked with is Sven Botman, who from Lille, who obviously would be more in the sort of future prospect type category, because he's only played 10 matches in Ligue 1. He's very young, but again, you would have to class him as one for the future.
Gab, when I asked you before the start of the show what other transfers you wanted to talk about, you said Olivier Giroud. Why on earth would Chelsea let him go?
Well, I think Olivier Giroud is a classic situation where you have somebody whose contract is winding down, who wants playing time. I think this is more one for the end of the season, but I think now he's getting that playing time that's important for him vis-a-vis the Euros. But I think by the same token, he's also going to want a new deal or want to continue playing next year, or maybe a new deal from Chelsea. So he fits into that category of situations where I think clubs have big calls to make. And this is where, of course, he can be approached by other clubs who might be interested in him.
But he's not going anywhere, is he, in January, Gab? You imagine he'll stay?
I think Chelsea would want to hang on to him, obviously. But equally, if he doesn't, if he doesn't get a new contract, if he works his way towards free agency, from next season, he can already sign with another club as early as this January.
Meanwhile, let's talk about Paulo Dybala, shall we? Of course, excellent under Sarri at the end of last season. This season, he's an absolute stinker. Can we see him leaving Juventus?
Again, it's one of those situations, and you're going to hear me repeat this several times. You can't look at, we're in a crisis. You can't look at people in a vacuum away from their contracts. Paulo Dybala has 18 months left. It's exactly like the Paul Pogba situation. The difference here is that Juventus have offered him a new deal. Apparently, it's quite far off what Dybala believes he's worth. And so, from Juve's perspective, they either give him a new deal, or otherwise, the best time to shift him would be now, because he's still far enough from free agency, that you can get hopefully something close to market value for him. That said, anybody bringing Dybala in will likely have to give him quite a lot of money in wages, probably certainly more than what Juve were offering him. And so that's the conundrum there for Dybala and for Juventus. I wouldn't be surprised if Juve tried, if they think that they can get some money back from him, if they try to push him out the door at the right price.
Now, speaking of contracts, I feel as is tradition on New Year's Day every year, ESPN FC put out the best 11 with regards to players with contracts that will expire at the end of the season. What was interesting, what struck me, Gab, was Donnarumma. How Milan let it get to 6 months to go without him signing a new contract?
Well, I mean, in some ways, this has to do with the previous administration at Milan, when Lee Yong-hong and his people were in charge, and Fassone, of course. You had a situation where he signed an absolutely, I think he was still, 18, 19 at the time. He signed an absolutely enormous contract that made him the second highest paid goalkeeper in the world at the time. I think even now he's still the third highest paid keeper in the world. His agent, of course, is Mino Raiola, which is who's obviously a tough negotiator. I think Milan waited on the contract because they couldn't reach a deal with Raiola. I think they realize how important he is, because he's 21 years old. He's already played hundreds of games for the club. Equally, they can't be held to ransom. Equally, what plays into this as well with Donnarumma is, we're talking about a goalkeeper, and we're talking about, a huge salary should he leave on a free transfer. The kind of clubs that can afford enormous salaries for goalkeepers, many of them already have a top-notch keeper and aren't necessarily looking for one. That plays in Milan's favor. some suggestion, I think this might be the way that ultimately this resolves itself, is that he does resign, maybe with a small pay bump, maybe not, maybe something bonus laden, but Mino Raiola insists on putting in some sort of release clause in the next couple of years, so that if suddenly one of the big boys needs a goalkeeper, then of course Mino Raiola's client will be in the mix. Obviously from Milan's perspective, they hope it becomes a moot point, because Donnarumma has said before, and you tend to believe him, he never wants to leave Milan.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content,